world thought Filipinos could never do it, but we just shattered another world record. And trust me, no one saw this coming. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. For the longest time, the world has underestimated Filipinos. Big nations with big economies always dominated the headlines. The US breaking athletic records, China building skyscrapers in record time, Japan inventing new technologies, and many believed that the Philippines, a small archipelago often painted as developing and struggling, couldn't possibly compete on the global stage of world records. But in 2025, that perception shattered. Filipinos didn't just set a record. They made history in a way that left the world speechless. Let's start with the record itself. This wasn't a small achievement. Filipinos pulled off something so bold, so relentless, that Guinness officials had to double check because even they couldn't believe it. It was the longest singing marathon, a staggering 110 hours and 15 minutes of continuous singing. Think about that. Over 4 days of non-stop voices, harmonies, and passion. No nation had ever pushed this far. But Filipinos, known worldwide for their love of music and karaoke, proved the stereotype wasn't just for fun. It was a superpower. The microphones never went silent, the crowd never gave up, and every note carried the resilience of a people determined to be heard. But here's the catch. When the attempt was first announced, skeptics laughed. Critics said Filipinos may love singing, but breaking a world record? Impossible. They argued the stamina required, the logistics of organizing such a marathon, and the discipline needed were beyond reach. After all, world records aren't about enthusiasm alone. They require structure, verification, and global attention. And for decades, those were the things the Philippines lacked. Then came the surprise. Not only did Filipinos succeed, they smashed past the old record with hours to spare. Organizers worked in shifts, volunteers kept singers hydrated and healthy, and the entire community rallied around the effort. It wasn't just a contest, it was Bayanihan in action, the Filipino spirit of community and unity. This wasn't simply about singing. It was about proving that when Filipinos come together, no obstacle is too great. And this isn't the first time Filipinos shocked the world with a record. Remember the largest human flag? In 2014, nearly 39,000 Filipinos gathered in Luneta Park, transforming into a massive living Philippine flag. From the air, it was breathtaking. Tens of thousands of red, white, blue, and yellow-clad citizens standing shoulder to shoulder, forming a symbol of pride that Guinness declared unbeatable. Or take the world's largest lantern from Pampanga, a tradition so dazzling it earned international recognition. These aren't just numbers, they are declarations to the world. We may be small, but together we are unstoppable. To put it in context, countries like the US or China often break records with billion-dollar budgets, state support, and global PR machines. The Philippines does it with community spirit, creativity, and sacrifice. That's what shocks the world. It's not just about the record itself, it's about who broke it. Filipinos, ordinary workers, students, mothers, fathers, proving that history isn't only written by the powerful, it's also written by those who refuse to quit. Let's take a personal angle. Meet Jessa, a 22-year-old nursing student who joined the marathon. For 3 days straight, she sang during her assigned slots, fueled not by fame, but by pride. When asked why she pushed through exhaustion, she said, "Because the world needs to know Filipinos never give up. We are more than helpers, more than workers, we are history makers." Her words capture what this record really means. It's not just about singing, it's about identity. But here's the hidden message the world often misses. When Filipinos break records, it's not just entertainment, it's resilience disguised as celebration. Singing for 110 hours may sound like fun, but it symbolizes decades of a people enduring hardship, corruption, poverty, and even disasters, yet still finding their voice. Forming a giant human flag isn't just patriotism, it's a reminder that even in a fragmented nation, unity is possible. Building the world's biggest lantern isn't just artistry, it's proof that even in darkness, Filipinos shine the brightest. Then the recognition comes. Guinness doesn't just hand out records easily. Every attempt must be verified, measured, and documented. By breaking these records, Filipinos force the world to look, to witness, to record, to admit. For once, the headlines aren't about typhoons, poverty, or migration. They're about triumph. And that shift in narrative matters more than people realize. Because when the world sees Filipinos as record breakers, it chips away at the stereotypes that have long defined us. But don't think this is just about fun achievements. Records like these also create economic ripples. Tourism spikes when global media covers events like the Human Flag or Lantern festivals. Local businesses thrive as crowds gather. Even overseas Filipinos feel a surge of pride that strengthens communities abroad. That's the hidden power of these records. They don't just make history, they shape futures. But now let's address the doubt again. Some still say these are just symbolic. They don't change the world. But here's the truth. Symbols change perception, and perception changes reality. A world that underestimates Filipinos is a world that pays them less, values them less, and sees them as replaceable. A world that sees Filipinos break records is a world that begins to recognize their worth. And that recognition is the seed of respect, opportunity, and influence. Filipinos making history isn't just about pride. It's about power. Every time we break a record, we break a barrier. Every time we shock the world, we reshape how it views us. And in 2025, the world is finally starting to admit it. Filipinos aren't just participants in history, they are authors of it. If you're proud that Filipinos keep proving doubters wrong, type respect in the comments right now. The Guinness certificates might look impressive on paper, but here's the truth. Filipinos have been making history far beyond entertainment. The world only notices when it's a lantern, a marathon, or a human flag, but the real records Filipinos are breaking every single day go far deeper. They're in hospitals, classrooms, seas, laboratories, and even outer space. And those achievements are rewriting what the world thought possible from a country of just 115 million. Take the seas, for example. Did you know that 1 out of every 4 seafarers in the world is Filipino? That's not a headline-grabbing Guinness record, but it's a record of survival and resilience. The global shipping industry, responsible for moving 90% of the world's goods, depends on Filipino sailors. They navigate storms, spend months away from their families, and keep the gears of global trade turning. Without them, supermarkets in New York would go empty, factories in Europe would shut down, and oil in the Middle East wouldn't reach Asia. It's not a certificate kind of record, but it's the kind that holds the world together. But here's the irony. Despite their dominance at sea, many of these workers remain invisible. Rarely do shipping giants put Filipino faces on posters or ads. Instead, they're simply called migrant crews. The world benefits, but the credit often vanishes. Then recognition starts creeping in. In 2025, industry reports openly acknowledge that without Filipino seafarers, international trade would collapse. That's history being made not by celebrity or spectacle, but by sheer, consistent, irreplaceable skill. And it doesn't stop there. Let's talk healthcare. Walk into a hospital in New York, London, Singapore, or Riyadh, and chances are one of the nurses caring for patients is Filipino. In fact, the US alone employs over 150,000 Filipino nurses, making them the largest group of foreign-trained nurses in the country. Japan, facing an aging crisis, now recruits thousands of Filipino caregivers every year under bilateral agreement. In the Middle East, Filipino nurses are the backbone of hospitals. This isn't just participation, this is dominance. But here's the heartbreaking reality. Many of these nurses leave behind children and parents who need care themselves. The brain drain is real. The Philippines loses thousands of skilled professionals each year. Some local hospitals report being half-staffed because their nurses have gone abroad. The sacrifice is enormous. Then comes the undeniable truth. Despite the pain, these workers save lives daily, often in countries that once doubted or dismissed Filipinos. In 2020, during the pandemic, Filipino nurses were celebrated as frontline heroes worldwide. That recognition carried into 2025 as governments admitted they cannot fill healthcare shortages without Pinoy workers. Again, it's not a Guinness record, but it's a world record of compassion and endurance. Now let's move to something that shocks even more people: Filipino talent in science and technology. Dr. Yosette Bio, a Filipina educator, had a planet named after her by MIT's Lincoln Laboratory for her contributions to science. Dr. Baldomero Oliveira, a Filipino chemist, discovered a compound in cone snail venom that led to a groundbreaking painkiller, now considered one of the most powerful in medicine. And in space, Philippine engineers have worked on satellite projects like Diwata 1 and Maya 2, putting the Philippines on the map in global aerospace. But again, here's the twist. These achievements rarely make it to headlines. The world claps when the Philippines sings for 110 hours straight, but it barely blinks when Filipino scientists discover cures or create innovations that save lives. Then slowly, the narrative changes. As countries like Singapore and Australia openly admit they rely on Filipinos, the scientific community too is beginning to recognize the intellectual muscle coming from the Philippines. Whether it's healthcare breakthroughs, agricultural innovations, or space technology, Filipinos are proving that history isn't just made in labs in the US or Europe. It's being written by minds trained in Manila, Davao, and Cebu. But let's not forget culture. From boxing legends like Manny Pacquiao to singers who dominate global stages like Lea Salonga and Charisse Pamponco, Filipinos have repeatedly broken barriers. Pacquiao, for example, is the only boxer in history to win world titles in 8 different weight divisions. That's not just a Philippine record, that's a world record etched permanently into the history of sports. Lea Salonga, meanwhile, became the first Asian woman to win a Tony Award for her role in Miss Saigon. She shattered the glass ceiling for Asians on Broadway, proving Filipinos could headline global art forms once thought off limits. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Filipinos often only get respect abroad after fighting twice as hard, proving twice as much, and sacrificing twice as long. Recognition isn't handed to them. They have to claw their way into history. Then that struggle becomes a lesson. Every victory, every record, every first is amplified because it carries the weight of centuries of underestimation. Filipinos aren't just winning trophies, they're rewriting how the world sees Southeast Asians, how it sees migrants, and how it sees resilience. Now let's tie this back to Malaysia's and Singapore's recent confessions. If those nations can admit they cannot survive without Filipino workers, then the broader global stage must also acknowledge Filipino contributions in science, sports, arts, and culture, because here's the truth. The Philippines has never been short of talent, it's only been short of recognition. Comment pride if you believe the world should recognize the full scale of Filipino achievement, not just in records, but in every corner of life. When the world claps because Filipinos broke another record, it's easy to see it as just a headline, a few days of pride, a moment of celebration. But the truth is much deeper. Every record broken, every first achieved, every recognition earned isn't just about the past, it's about reshaping the future. Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, Japan, even the United States. All these nations are starting to confess that Filipinos are indispensable. And once that confession is out there, the entire balance of power begins to shift. Let's start with the global reality. There are 12 million Filipinos overseas, scattered across 100 plus countries. They are the nurses keeping hospitals alive in New York and London, the seafarers transporting 90% of the world's goods, the domestic workers raising families in Singapore and Riyadh, the teachers shaping minds in Tokyo, the IT professionals coding the future in Dubai and Toronto. No other nation has exported such a consistent lifeline of people across every corner of the globe. That diaspora is not just a workforce, it's a force of history. But here's the uncomfortable truth. For decades, Filipinos were called modern-day heroes, but mostly by politicians who needed remittances to keep the economy afloat. At home, many OFWs returned broken, financially drained, emotionally scarred, their sacrifices reduced to statistics. Abroad, many remain underpaid, underprotected, and underestimated. Records are celebrated, but dignity is often overlooked. Then comes the turning point. Each record broken chips away at stereotypes. Each Guinness certificate forces the world to print headlines that say, Filipinos did this. Each confession from a foreign government admitting reliance on Pinoy workers pushes the needle further toward respect. Slowly, the image of Filipinos is transforming from invisible helpers to visible history makers. And that transformation has consequences. Think of it like this. When Singapore admitted in 2025 that its elderly care and households would collapse without Filipinos, it wasn't just a compliment, it was leverage. It gave Filipinos bargaining power, it gave advocacy groups ammunition to demand better wages, more days off, and fairer policies. When Malaysia confessed that Filipino workers are among the most skilled and adaptable migrants, it wasn't just lip service. It set the stage for reforms, from pathways to regularization for undocumented workers to bilateral agreements that recognize skills more formally. Records and confessions together form a chain reaction. Recognition leads to respect, respect leads to reform, and reform leads to empowerment. But let's make it personal. Imagine being an OFW in 2010. Unseen, unheard, treated as replaceable. Now imagine being one in 2025, in a world where your host country is openly saying, we cannot function without you. That changes how you walk into work, how you hold your head up high, how you raise your children to be proud of who they are. History isn't just a headline. It's dignity restored. But here's the danger. Recognition abroad won't matter if the Philippines itself doesn't keep up. If local hospitals continue losing nurses, if classrooms keep losing teachers, if engineers keep leaving, the homeland risks stagnation. Filipinos may win applause worldwide, but the nation could stay trapped in the same old cycle, exporting talent instead of empowering it at home. That is the risk of relying only on overseas records and not building domestic ones. Then comes the opportunity. What if the Philippines doubled down on this global demand? What if the government built world-class training centers, producing not just workers, but leaders, nurses who become hospital directors, teachers who become education ministers abroad, IT coders who become startup founders? What if every record set abroad inspired an equal movement at home, investing in innovation, culture, and science so that the Philippines itself becomes the stage, not just the supply chain? That's the real power of these records. They don't just make people clap for a moment. They prove potential. They send a message to the next generation of Filipinos. Don't let anyone tell you it's impossible. We've already made history once and we'll do it again. Look at Manny Pacquiao's boxing legacy. For years, the world thought an Asian couldn't dominate global boxing, but then Pacquiao rose, 8 weight divisions, a record nobody has matched. That shattered the ceiling for Filipino athletes. Look at Leah Salonga on Broadway. But then she won the Tony, proving Filipinos could headline world stages. These aren't just trophies, they're roadmaps. They say, if it was impossible before, it's possible now. And that's what scares the world most. Because once a people prove they can make history, they can't be underestimated anymore. Every record Filipinos break weakens the excuse of every employer, every government, every system that tries to keep them invisible. The narrative is changing. And once narratives change, policies follow. Type the word visible in the comments if you believe Filipinos should never again be hidden in the shadows, but fully seen for the giants they are. Now let's zoom out. When Filipinos break world records, they aren't just competing with individuals, they're competing with nations. And in many cases, they're winning. Out of the top 10 Guinness World Records held in Asia in the last decade, 3 belong to the Philippines. The Philippines also consistently ranks among the top migrant-sending nations with the largest labor impact globally. That's a record in itself. Not glamorous, but vital. When the history of the 21st century is written, it won't just mention the superpowers. It will mention the nation that supplied the people who made superpowers function. But the ultimate challenge is this. Recognition from abroad is powerful, but it must be matched by recognition at home. Filipinos can't only be valued when they send remittances or when they make headlines. They must be valued for their daily resilience, their creativity, their culture, and their role as the backbone of society. The danger is not being underestimated abroad anymore. The danger is being underestimated at home. Then comes the future. Imagine a Filipino that owns this power, that builds policies to empower its diaspora, that uses global recognition as leverage for better deals, that reinvests remittances into industries that create jobs, so leaving becomes a choice, not a necessity. Imagine Filipinos not just breaking records in singing or sports, but leading in technology, medicine, and governance worldwide. That's not a dream, it's already starting. And Malaysia's 2025 confession is just one proof of how close we are. So when we say Filipinos just made history, it's not just about Guinness. It's about rewriting the story of an entire people. A story that says, you thought we couldn't, but we did. And now we will keep doing it until you see us, respect us, and treat us as equals on the global stage.